I stare at the foreclosure notice in my hands, the paper trembling as I read the words that destroy everything I've worked for. And I can't understand how my life has become this nightmare where the woman I trusted with my heart and my future has systematically dismantled both while I was busy building our dreams. The empty shell of what was supposed to be our renovated kitchen mocks me with its exposed pipes and half-finished drywall, a monument to my own stupidity and Sarah's calculated betrayal that cuts deeper than any physical wound ever could. Sarah Martinez Chen, my college sweetheart who became my wife of 8 years, the woman who I thought was building our future while I focused on growing my consulting firm, has taken out a second mortgage against our home equity without my knowledge, $300,000 that I earned through 16-hour days and weekend client calls, money that was supposed to fund our dream renovation, and maybe, eventually, the children we talked about having in this house that she's now stolen from under me. The bank officer's voice echoes in my memory from this morning's devastating phone call, where I learned that our monthly payment has tripled and we're already 3 months behind. And when I asked how this was possible, since I never signed any additional loan documents, he told me that my wife had power of attorney for our joint accounts and had presented documentation showing my consent for the equity loan, documentation that I now realize was forged with my signature, that she'd practiced from our joint tax returns and credit card applications. I think about how she handled all our finances because she was better with money, how she convinced me that I should focus on what I did best while she managed our domestic life, how she made me feel like a controlling husband whenever I asked questions about our spending or tried to review our monthly statements. And now I see that every argument where she accused me of not trusting her was actually her protecting the web of lies she was weaving around our entire financial foundation. The irony burns like acid in my throat because just 6 months ago, I hired Diego Morales' previous restaurant to cater our 8th anniversary party, a celebration of our enduring love and partnership that was actually the moment my wife met the man she would destroy our marriage to fund, the man who would benefit from every late night I spent building my consulting practice and every client dinner I attended to grow our income while she was home, managing our investments, and apparently planning my systematic destruction. The truth unravels like a sweater caught on barbed wire, each thread revealing another layer of deception that makes me question not just my marriage, but my own judgment, my ability to read people, my basic understanding of the woman who shared my bed and my dreams for nearly a decade while plotting against everything I held dear. Sarah and Diego met when I hired his previous restaurant to cater our anniversary party, and I remember how impressed she was with his culinary vision and entrepreneurial spirit. How she insisted we book him again for her mother's birthday, even though his prices were steep. How she started talking about restaurants and food culture with a passion that should have been my first warning sign. The affair has been going on for 2 years. 2 full years of lies and fake smiles and manufactured intimacy while she was building a completely separate life with another man. And I discover this through credit card statements that she forgot to hide, hotel receipts in her purse from afternoons when she claimed to be shopping with her sister, photos on Diego's restaurant's social media showing Sarah at the soft opening of Corazon Heart, the restaurant funded entirely by my money and named for their secret love while I was working overtime to pay for what I thought was our home renovation. Every business trip I took, every late night at the office, every weekend I spent building my consulting firm to secure our future was actually time she used to plan our divorce and fund her new life. And I realize now that she never saw my success as our success, but as an opportunity to take what she wanted and leave me with nothing, which is exactly what her mother, Elena Martinez, taught her to do from the moment she decided I wasn't good enough for her precious daughter. My business partner and childhood friend Kevin Liu tried to warn me months ago when he noticed changes in Sarah's behavior, how she stopped asking about our work, how she seemed distracted during couples' dinners, how she always had reasons why I couldn't attend family events without her. But I called him jealous of our happiness, and told him that married couples needed their individual friendships and interests, never imagining that Sarah's new interest was destroying our marriage to fund another man's dreams. Kevin saw through her immediately, with the clarity that only comes from not being blinded by love and shared history. And when he asked careful questions about our finances and whether I was comfortable with Sarah handling everything alone, I got defensive and accused him of not trusting my wife, of being the kind of bachelor who didn't understand marriage, when really he was the only person who cared enough about me to risk our friendship by speaking the truth I was too proud and too trusting to hear. The restaurant Corazon serves the kind of upscale Mexican cuisine that Diego always dreamed of creating, with imported tequilas and artisanal mezcals, and a wine list curated by Sarah herself, who suddenly became an expert in food and beverage pairings. And I realized that every time she claimed to be taking cooking classes or wine tastings with her girlfriends, she was actually building her expertise to be Diego's perfect business partner in every sense, preparing for the life they would build together once they discarded me like an empty bank account. Sarah's mother, Elena Martinez, orchestrates the final phase of my destruction with the efficiency of a general executing a long-planned military campaign. And I finally understand that she's been planning this for years, hating me for stealing her daughter from their culture, for being the Asian man who married into their Mexican-American family and somehow convinced their precious Sarah to prioritize our partnership over her mother's constant demands for money and attention and control. Elena always smiled at family dinners while asking pointed questions about my income and my business prospects, commenting on how different our cultures were and how important it was for Sarah to maintain her roots and her family connections. And I thought she was just being protective of her daughter, when really she was teaching Sarah to see me as an obstacle to her true happiness. With a man who shared their heritage and understood their values in ways that I apparently never could. The manipulation runs deeper than I ever imagined, because Elena convinced Sarah that I was financially controlling, even though I gave her complete access to all our accounts, that I was emotionally distant, even though I worked constantly to provide the lifestyle she wanted, that I was culturally insensitive, even though I learned Spanish and celebrated every tradition and welcomed her entire extended family into our home for every holiday and birthday and quinceañera, treating them like the family I never had growing up as an only child. Sarah files for divorce and claims that I was financially abusive, hiding money from her and controlling her access to our joint accounts, which is such a complete reversal of reality that it makes me question my own sanity until I remember that projection is the favorite weapon of people who destroy others while claiming to be victims. She gets a restraining order by claiming domestic violence, describing incidents that never happened but sound plausible enough to a family court judge who sees dozens of similar cases every week and doesn't have time to investigate the truth behind every accusation. The legal system becomes another weapon in their arsenal because Sarah's tears and Elena's coaching and Diego's supportive presence in the courtroom create a narrative where I'm the abusive husband who drove his wife into another man's arms, and my attempts to present evidence of the financial fraud are dismissed as the desperate lies of a man trying to avoid responsibility for his failed marriage and controlling behavior. I lose my biggest client when the legal drama becomes public, and my professional reputation suffers because clients worry about my instability and my ability to focus on their projects when my personal life is such a disaster. And watching my consulting firm collapse after years of careful building feels like watching someone burn down a house I built with my own hands while claiming I was never a real carpenter anyway. The business I spent 8 years growing, the client relationships I cultivated through honesty and reliability and genuine care for their success, the reputation I earned through late nights and weekend calls and always delivering exactly what I promised. All of it crumbles because Sarah's accusations make me look like a man who can't be trusted with money or relationships, and potential clients don't want to risk their business on someone whose wife had to steal from him to escape his abuse. The divorce hearing becomes a public execution of everything I thought I knew about justice and truth, where Sarah gets the house because she claims I made it an unsafe environment, half my remaining assets because California is a community property state, and alimony because I was the primary breadwinner during our marriage, and she gave up her career to support my ambitions, which is such a distortion of our actual partnership that I wonder if we lived in completely different realities for 8 years. Sarah never had a career to give up because she majored in art history and worked part-time at galleries while I was building my consulting practice, and she chose to focus on managing our household because it gave her the control and flexibility she wanted. Not because I demanded it or prevented her from working, but the family court judge sees a woman who sacrificed her professional development for her husband's success, and deserves compensation for that sacrifice regardless of how she chose to end the marriage. I'm forced to move into a studio apartment in a neighborhood I would never have chosen, working odd jobs to pay the court-ordered support while trying to rebuild my consulting practice from nothing, and the contrast between my new reality and Sarah's life as the glamorous co-owner of Corazon feels like a deliberate punishment for believing that love and trust and hard work were enough to build a lasting partnership. Diego's restaurant thrives with my money, while Sarah plays hostess in designer dresses, greeting customers and managing the wine program, and posting Instagram photos of their journey as small business owners who followed their dreams despite the obstacles. And seeing her smile in those photos while I'm eating ramen noodles and working security shifts to pay rent makes me understand that some betrayals cut so deep they change your fundamental understanding of human nature. Kevin offers help repeatedly, but I'm too broken and too proud to accept his charity, pushing away the only person who tried to warn me and protect me because accepting his friendship feels like admitting that I was the naive fool everyone said I was, and I can't bear to see the pity in his eyes when he looks at what I've become after losing everything I worked for to a woman who never loved me enough to be honest about wanting something else. The scene that breaks me completely happens 6 months after the divorce is final, when I'm walking past Corazon after another failed job interview and see Sarah and Diego's engagement party in full swing, their families mingling and celebrating while I stand across the street like a ghost, watching the life that was built on the ruins of mine. Watching Sarah laugh and dance and accept congratulations for finding her true love after escaping her toxic marriage to a man who clearly never deserved her. 6 months later, I'm working as a night security guard at an office complex, walking empty hallways and watching parking lots while successful people sleep in their comfortable homes. And the irony of protecting other people's property when I couldn't protect my own becomes a bitter joke that follows me through every 12-hour shift. The job pays barely enough to cover my studio apartment and court-ordered alimony, leaving me to choose between groceries and gasoline, between heating and electricity, between the medication my doctor prescribed for my rising blood pressure, and the phone bill that keeps me connected to potential consulting clients who never call back. My diet consists of whatever I can afford at the dollar store and convenience mart near my apartment. Processed foods and energy drinks that fuel my exhaustion but destroy my health. And I know I'm killing myself slowly, but I can't afford to care about long-term consequences when I'm barely surviving each day. The stress of financial ruin and social humiliation and complete isolation creates a constant pressure in my chest that I ignore until ignoring it becomes impossible, until the heart attack hits me at 35 like a freight train I never saw coming. I die alone in the county hospital emergency room while Sarah enjoys her honeymoon in Cabo with Diego, posting sunset photos and champagne toasts and captions about new beginnings and following your heart. And my final conscious thought is wondering if she even knows I'm gone, or if my death is just another problem that someone else will have to handle since I'm no longer useful to anyone. The bitterness tastes like copper pennies, and regret as I think about all the signs I missed, all the warnings I ignored, All the chances I had to protect myself if only I had listened to Kevin, or trusted my instincts, or demanded transparency instead of accepting Sarah's explanations about privacy and independence, and not wanting to burden me with boring financial details. If I could do it all again, I would have listened to Kevin, protected what was mine, and never trusted her with my heart or my home. But second chances don't exist in real life, and death is final, and I close my eyes, accepting that I was too naive and too trusting to survive in a world where people destroy the ones who love them most. Then I open my eyes, and I'm sitting in our old kitchen, the one with the outdated cabinets and chipped countertops that we planned to renovate with our home equity loan. And Sarah is standing across from me with a folder full of papers and that bright smile she uses when she wants something important. And she's saying the words that destroyed my life the first time. "Honey, I found the perfect way to finance our renovation. We can use our home equity, and the payments will be so manageable. I know exactly what those papers are, what Sarah is really planning, and I know I have 6 months to save myself before my heart gives out from the stress of losing everything I've worked for to fund her lover's restaurant dreams. And the knowledge hits me like ice water in my veins, because this is March 15th, 2023. The exact day I signed away my future in my previous life without reading the documents or asking questions or demanding to meet the contractor who supposedly needed such a massive upfront payment. The papers trembling in my hands look identical to the ones that destroyed me before. The same home equity loan application with the same inflated contractor estimates and the same urgent timeline that doesn't allow for proper review. And I realize that Sarah has been planning this betrayal for months, maybe years, perfecting every detail and every lie while I trusted her completely with our finances and our future. My hand moves towards the pen she's holding out with that expectant smile, the same automatic obedience that doomed me in my past life. But this time I stop myself and feel the weight of knowledge that she doesn't know I possess, the terrible clarity of understanding exactly how this conversation ends if I sign these papers and trust her promises about contractors and renovations and building our dream home together. "I need to think about this," I hear myself saying, and Sarah's smile falters just slightly. That micro-expression of annoyance that I missed the first time because I was too focused on being the supportive husband who trusted his wife's financial judgment. But now I see the calculation behind her disappointment and the way she quickly recovers with concerned understanding. "Think about what, honey?" she asks with that tone she uses when she's pretending to be patient while actually being frustrated, and I recognize the manipulation tactic of making me feel unreasonable for wanting to review major financial decisions. The same emotional pressure that convinced me to sign without reading, because questioning her meant I didn't trust her, and not trusting her meant I was a controlling husband. In my past life, I signed these papers without reading them because I trusted her completely, believed in our partnership, wanted to support her vision for our home improvement project. But now I see the predatory calculation in her eyes and the way she's positioned this conversation to make refusal seem like betrayal of our relationship rather than protection of our assets. The familiar kitchen surrounds me with its outdated charm and memories of better times, back when I thought Sarah's enthusiasm for renovation came from wanting to build our future together, rather than wanting to steal our equity to fund her secret life with Diego. And the contrast between my naive past self and my current knowledge creates a surreal feeling of watching my own destruction from the outside. "I want to review this with our financial advisor first," I tell Sarah, watching her face change from supportive wife to frustrated manipulator as she realizes I'm not going to be the same pushover who signed whatever she put in front of me. And her immediate resistance to professional review tells me everything I need to know about the legitimacy of this loan application. "We don't need a financial advisor for a simple home improvement loan," she says with that laugh that's supposed to sound carefree, but actually sounds nervous. And I can see her mentally scrambling to find new pressure points since the old ones aren't working, since I'm not responding to her disappointment and concern with the immediate compliance she's trained me to provide. I call Kevin immediately, right there in front of Sarah, and ask him to recommend a financial advisor who can review loan documents. And Kevin's shock at me actually asking for his opinion after years of dismissing his concerns about Sarah's financial management makes me realize how completely I isolated myself from anyone who might have protected me from this betrayal. "Finally," Kevin says, and I can hear the relief in his voice as he gives me the name of his own advisor. "I've been waiting for you to wake up, Marcus. That loan structure makes no sense for home improvement. Legitimate contractors don't need that kind of upfront payment." Sarah's hostility becomes visible as she listens to my conversation with Kevin, and I see her mask slipping as she realizes that my support network is stronger than she calculated, that Kevin has been waiting for exactly this moment to help me protect myself from her manipulation, and her anger at being questioned tells me more about her real intentions than any explanation she might offer. "Why are you being so difficult?" she asks when I hang up. And the accusation in her voice is the same weapon she's always used to shut down my questions and concerns, making me feel guilty for being cautious with our future. But this time I recognize the manipulation for what it is and refuse to let her make me the villain for protecting our assets. "I'm being responsible," I tell her. And the way she flinches at that word tells me that she knows exactly how irresponsible and predatory this loan application really is, how much damage it will do to our financial security and our marriage, how completely it will destroy everything we've built together so she can build something new with Diego. The next few days become a careful dance where I document everything, photographing the original loan documents before she can change them, recording our conversations about the renovation project, noting the inconsistencies in her explanations about timeline and contractors, and why we need such a massive loan for what should be a straightforward kitchen renovation. I start working longer hours, claiming big client deadlines while actually building evidence and consulting with Kevin's financial advisor, and Sarah's frustration grows as she realizes I'm not going to sign blindly, that her timeline for stealing our equity is being disrupted by my sudden interest in our financial decisions after years of letting her handle everything alone. Kevin's financial advisor confirms what I already know from my previous life. This loan structure is designed to extract maximum equity with minimal oversight, the kind of predatory lending that targets trusting spouses who don't read fine print or ask hard questions about where their money is really going. I hire a private investigator to document Sarah's affair, not because I need proof of her betrayal, but because I need evidence that will protect my assets and my reputation when this marriage inevitably explodes. The investigator discovers what I already lived through once. Diego already has investors lined up for his restaurant, professional backers who are waiting to see proof of his commitment before they provide additional funding, and Sarah's home equity theft is her way of demonstrating that she's willing to sacrifice everything for their shared dream of building Corazon together. I move money to separate accounts that Sarah doesn't know about, consulting with a divorce attorney who specializes in financial fraud cases, and every step I take feels like undoing the noose that Sarah has been tightening around my neck for months, while I was too trusting to notice the rope. The lawyer confirms that California's community property laws won't protect Sarah if she's using marital assets to fund an affair, that adultery combined with financial fraud creates grounds for asset protection that didn't exist in my previous life, when I was too shocked and heartbroken to build a proper defense. Kevin becomes my closest ally in this careful campaign to protect myself. And his relief at finally being able to help me is almost overwhelming, because he's been watching Sarah manipulate me for years while being powerless to intervene without destroying our friendship. "I knew something was wrong when she stopped you from our monthly poker games," he tells me. And I realized that Sarah's gradual isolation of me from my support network was part of her long-term strategy to ensure I had no one to turn to when she destroyed our marriage. The poker games that Sarah claimed were excluding her and boys' club behavior were actually my main source of honest feedback about my relationship and my business decisions, and eliminating them meant eliminating the people who might have warned me about her suspicious behavior or encouraged me to take a more active role in our financial management. I start rebuilding those connections that Sarah severed, reaching out to old friends and colleagues who drifted away during the years when she convinced me that our marriage was more important than my other relationships, and their enthusiasm for reconnecting tells me that the isolation was entirely artificial, that these people never stopped caring about me, but respected what they thought were my choices about prioritizing my wife over my friendships. This time I won't be the naive husband who loses everything because he trusted blindly. I'll be the strategist who protects what's mine and ensures that the people who try to destroy me face consequences for their actions, and every piece of evidence I gather and every legal protection I put in place feels like building armor against the weapons Sarah used to destroy me in my previous life. I pretend to agree to the loan, but insist on meeting the contractor, Diego, personally, claiming that I want to discuss the renovation timeline and material choices since I'll be living through the construction. And Sarah's panic at this reasonable request tells me everything about how carefully she's kept Diego and me separated to prevent me from discovering their relationship. The dinner meeting takes place at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place that Sarah suddenly started suggesting for our anniversary dinners and special occasions. And I realize now that these were probably locations where she and Diego had romantic dinners, places that held special meaning for their relationship that she was trying to share with me in some twisted attempt to integrate her two lives. Diego arrives with the confidence of a man who thinks he's about to close the deal of a lifetime, and watching him interact with Sarah is like watching a movie I've seen before, but from a different angle. Seeing the intimate touches and shared glances that I missed completely in my previous life when I was focused on being polite and supportive of Sarah's enthusiasm for our renovation project. The conversation reveals details that only a lover would know. Diego mentions Sarah's preference for morning coffee over afternoon tea, her habit of reading restaurant reviews in bed on Sunday mornings, her dream of traveling through Mexico's wine regions to research authentic flavor profiles for their restaurant's menu, and each revelation hits me like a physical blow because these are intimate details from the private life they've been building while I was working to fund it. Sarah has such a sophisticated palate, Diego says, touching her hand across the table in a gesture that's too familiar for a contractor meeting a client's husband for the first time. She understands the vision for Corazon in ways that most people couldn't appreciate. The name of their restaurant, Heart, feels like a deliberate mockery of our marriage, and I record everything on my phone while pretending to take notes about construction timelines and material costs, building the evidence that will protect me when this carefully constructed lie inevitably collapses under the weight of its own contradictions. Corazon? I ask, letting confusion color my voice. I thought this was about renovating our kitchen. The moment of panic that flashes between Sarah and Diego tells me that they've rehearsed this conversation, but not thoroughly enough. That they expected me to sign the papers and ask questions later, if at all. And my presence at this dinner is disrupting their carefully planned timeline for stealing our equity and transitioning Sarah from my wife to Diego's business partner. Sarah recovers quickly with an explanation about how the contractor specializes in restaurant-quality kitchen installations and how learning about his professional projects helps her understand the level of expertise he'll bring to our home renovation. But her explanation feels rehearsed and hollow. And I can see Diego struggling to maintain the fiction that he's here to discuss our kitchen rather than their restaurant. The confrontation comes when I stop pretending to believe their lies and tell them that I know about their affair, about the real purpose of the loan, about their plans to use my money to fund their dream restaurant while destroying my marriage and my financial security. I know what you're really building, I tell them. And the look of trapped animals in their eyes gives me the satisfaction I never got in my previous life when I discovered their betrayal too late to protect myself. Sarah's family's annual spring celebration becomes the perfect venue for exposing their betrayal because Elena Martinez has invited extended family and family friends, creating an audience that will ensure the story of Sarah's affair spreads through their entire social network within hours of my revelation. I arrive with a folder full of evidence, photographs of Sarah and Diego together, recordings of their conversations about the restaurant, financial documents showing the planned theft of our home equity, bank records proving that Diego has been receiving money from our joint accounts for months. Elena's face when I reveal that I know about her coaching Sarah to destroy me is worth every moment of humiliation I suffered in my previous life. Because this time she doesn't get to orchestrate my destruction in private while maintaining her public image as the protective mother who only wanted the best for her daughter. You taught her to steal from her husband, I tell Elena in front of everyone, and watching her composure crumble as the family realizes she's been manipulating Sarah for her own purposes feels like justice finally being served. The family's shock as I play recordings of Sarah and Diego planning their future with my money creates the kind of public scandal that Elena always claimed to want to avoid, and I can see her calculating how to minimize the damage to their reputation while Sarah alternates between tears and anger and desperate attempts to control the narrative that's slipping away from her completely. You don't understand, Sarah says, her voice breaking as she tries to maintain sympathy from relatives who are hearing evidence of her betrayal in real time. Diego needs this opportunity to build something meaningful, something that represents our culture and our values. With my money, I respond, and the stark simplicity of that truth cuts through every justification and explanation she might offer. You're stealing from your husband to fund your lover's dreams, and your mother taught you to do it. The recording where Elena advises Sarah to file domestic violence charges to strengthen her divorce case plays like a horror movie soundtrack over the family celebration, and I watch relatives who welcomed me into their family for 8 years realize that Elena has been planning my destruction from the beginning, using their cultural loyalty and family bonds as weapons against the son-in-law she never accepted. Uncle Roberto, who taught me to make tamales and invited me to every quinceañera and graduation party, looks at Elena with disgust as he realizes how completely she's manipulated their family dynamics to justify her hatred of me. This is not who we are, he tells her, and his rejection of her manipulation carries more weight than any legal judgment because it represents the loss of family support that Elena values more than money or reputation. The celebration dissolves into chaos as family members choose sides and demand explanations, and I leave them to sort through the wreckage of Elena's schemes while I go home to pack Sarah's belongings and change the locks on the house that she tried to steal from me. This time, Elena doesn't get to destroy me in private. Everyone sees what they really are, and the social consequences will follow them long after the legal consequences are resolved. Filing for divorce first, with evidence of adultery and financial fraud, gives me the legal advantage that I never had in my previous life, when I was too shocked and heartbroken to protect myself properly. The private investigator's report documents Sarah's affair in detail, but more importantly, it reveals that Diego has done this before, targeted married women with access to significant assets, convinced them to fund his business ventures, then discarded them when their usefulness ended or their resources were exhausted. Sarah's lawyer abandons her case when the evidence becomes overwhelming, when it becomes clear that she can't claim financial abuse while simultaneously being caught stealing marital assets to fund an affair, and the complete collapse of her legal position feels like watching justice finally work the way it's supposed to work when people prepare properly and fight back strategically instead of accepting destruction passively. The restraining orders I obtain prevent both Sarah and Diego from accessing any joint assets, freezing the home equity loan application and protecting the house from foreclosure. And every legal protection I put in place feels like undoing the damage they caused in my previous life, when I was too trusting to see their betrayal coming and too devastated to fight back effectively. Kevin's vindication when everything I predicted comes true is complicated by his sadness at what our friendship cost me. But his support throughout this process proves that real loyalty exists even when I was too blind to recognize it before. "I've been waiting years for you to see what she really was," he tells me. And I realize that protecting me from Sarah's manipulation has been a burden he carried silently, trying to find ways to warn me without destroying our friendship or making me choose between my wife and my best friend. The court proceedings become a systematic dismantling of every lie Sarah told about our marriage, every false accusation she made about my character, every manipulation Elena taught her to use against me. And watching the legal system work in my favor this time feels like proof that preparation and evidence and strategic thinking can overcome even the most calculated betrayal. I keep the house, the business thrives without Sarah's constant undermining of my confidence and her subtle sabotage of my client relationships, and my reputation grows as the comeback king who refused to be destroyed by a manipulative ex-wife and her scheming family. Former competitors want to partner with me because they respect the resilience and strategic thinking I demonstrated throughout this crisis, and my consulting firm grows stronger than it ever was when I was distracted by trying to save a marriage that was already dead. The contrast with my previous life is stark. Instead of losing everything and dying alone, I've protected my assets, exposed the conspiracy against me, and built a stronger business foundation than I ever had when I was trying to balance Sarah's constant demands with my professional responsibilities. My consulting firm expands rapidly once Sarah stops undermining my confidence and sabotaging my client relationships, and I realize now that her constant criticism of my business decisions and her subtle comments about my professional abilities were part of a systematic campaign to weaken my self-esteem and make me more dependent on her approval and financial management. The renovation of our house proceeds according to my actual vision rather than Sarah's secret plans to increase equity for theft, and every improvement I make feels like reclaiming territory that was stolen from me, building something real and permanent that reflects my values and my aesthetic rather than compromising constantly to accommodate someone who never intended to share the future we were supposedly building together. Clients respect my resilience and strategic thinking throughout the divorce proceedings, and several tell me that watching me handle such a personal crisis with professionalism and careful planning gave them confidence in my ability to handle their business challenges with the same level of competence and preparation. The poker games resume with Kevin and our other friends, and the difference in my demeanor is obvious to everyone who knew me during my marriage to Sarah. I'm more relaxed, more decisive, more willing to trust my own judgment instead of constantly second-guessing myself and seeking approval from someone who was never actually supporting my success. My reputation grows as someone who can rebuild from devastating betrayal, and other entrepreneurs seek my advice about protecting their businesses and personal assets from partners who might not have their best interests at heart, turning my painful experience into expertise that helps other people avoid the destruction I suffered in my previous life. I'm not the same naive man who trusted blindly and ignored warning signs. I'm someone who values loyalty and builds carefully, who verifies trust instead of assuming it, who protects what matters while remaining open to genuine partnership with people who prove their commitment through actions rather than words. The house becomes everything I wanted it to be, without Sarah's input or interference. A space that reflects my personality and my values and my vision for the future. And every room tells the story of what's possible. When you build with your own resources, instead of depending on someone who sees your assets as tools for their own advancement. Diego's restaurant fails within 6 months without access to my money, and Sarah ends up working as a server there, trying to keep their dream alive while Diego looks for his next target, his next married woman with access to significant assets, who might be willing to fund his ambitions in exchange for his temporary affection and manufactured charm. Lisa Park has been quietly supporting me through everything, staying loyal even when the legal chaos made other contractors nervous about being associated with my projects. And I realized that her refusal to abandon my renovation when everyone else was protecting themselves from potential scandal tells me everything I need to know about her character and her feelings. She's the daughter of my parents' friends, someone who's known my family for years and watched me build my consulting practice and navigate my marriage from the perspective of someone who cared about my well-being without having any agenda or expectation of personal benefit. And her consistent support throughout my divorce feels like discovering that genuine loyalty was always there, waiting for me to be free enough to recognize and appreciate it. "I watched you almost destroy yourself for someone who never deserved you," Lisa tells me when I finally ask her about her decision to continue working on my house renovation, despite the legal complications and professional risks, and her honesty about seeing through Sarah's manipulation makes me realize that people with good intentions could see what I couldn't see because I was too close to the situation and too invested in making my marriage work. Our first real conversation about something other than construction timelines and material choices reveals that she's always cared but respected my marriage enough to maintain professional boundaries, even when she could see that Sarah was making me unhappy and isolated from the friends and family who actually supported my success rather than undermining it for their own purposes. The romance builds slowly, based on mutual respect and shared values, and the kind of genuine compatibility that develops when two people actually know each other as individuals rather than as fantasy projections of what they want their partner to be. And every conversation we have feels like discovering that real partnership is possible when both people are committed to building something together rather than using each other for personal advancement. Lisa understands my business because she runs her own architectural firm, appreciates the work ethic required to build something from nothing, values financial responsibility and honest communication, and the kind of trust that develops through consistent actions rather than dramatic declarations. And being with her feels like coming home to myself after years of trying to be someone that Sarah could love enough to stop betraying. 1 year later, Lisa and I host our engagement party at our beautifully renovated home, surrounded by the friends and family who supported us through everything and proved their loyalty when it mattered most. And the contrast with the toxic celebration of Sarah and Diego's engagement feels like proof that genuine happiness comes from building with people who share your values rather than stealing from people who trust you. Kevin serves as my best man, finally getting to be the protective brother he always wanted to be without having to worry about Sarah's manipulation driving a wedge between us, and his toast about friendship surviving even the worst betrayals brings tears to everyone's eyes because they know how close we came to losing each other to Sarah's systematic isolation campaign. The house that Sarah tried to steal becomes the foundation for a real partnership with Lisa, who contributed her architectural expertise and design vision to create something beautiful that belongs to both of us because we built it together rather than one person funding it, while the other person stole it for someone else. Sarah and Diego's restaurant failed spectacularly when the financial foundation collapsed, and their relationship couldn't survive the stress of building something real instead of just planning something romantic, and the last I heard, Sarah was working at a chain restaurant while Diego moved on to his next target, another married woman with assets he could access through charm and false promises. Elena Martinez lost her social standing in the family when Uncle Roberto and the other relatives realized how completely she had manipulated Sarah and destroyed their family's reputation through her schemes against me, and she ended up working as a cleaning lady for the country club where she used to attend parties as an honored guest, a perfect example of how karma eventually catches up with people who destroy others for their own advancement. Lisa and I plan our wedding for next spring, and our engagement photos show two people who are genuinely happy because we chose each other freely, rather than one person manipulating the other into a relationship that serves only their purposes. And every detail we plan together feels like building a future that belongs to both of us equally. The pregnancy test that shows positive just before our engagement party feels like the universe confirming that this relationship is blessed in ways that my marriage to Sarah never was. And knowing that we're creating new life together rather than one person stealing life from the other gives me hope that our children will grow up understanding what real love looks like when it's based on honesty and mutual support rather than manipulation and betrayal. I built a real home this time, with someone who builds with me rather than stealing from me. And every morning I wake up in the house that Sarah tried to steal feels like proof that justice exists, and that people who protect what matters can create something beautiful from the ashes of what was destroyed by those who never deserved their trust or their love in the first place. The consulting firm continues to grow, built on the foundation of integrity and strategic thinking that survived Sarah's attempts to destroy my confidence and my reputation. And my success feels earned rather than stolen because it comes from work I did with partners who support my growth rather than sabotaging it for their own benefit. Kevin's vindication is complete but tempered by genuine happiness for my recovery, and our friendship is stronger now because it survived the test of Sarah's manipulation and proved that real loyalty can outlast even the most calculated attempts to destroy it through lies and isolation and false accusations of disloyalty. This is what building a real future looks like. Two people who choose each other every day, who protect what they've built together, who create something beautiful because they both contribute rather than one person taking while the other gives. And I know that this time I got it right because I learned to recognize the difference between love and manipulation, between partnership and parasitism, between building together and being destroyed by someone who never intended to share the future they convinced you to fund.